Welcome back to the referral system training that I'm currently going through in my family time meetings. We didn't record this morning's family time, and I actually wanted to put the training we're doing this morning in a short, more succinct kind of block. And before we do that, I want to just do a little recap of where we've been so far so that you can make sure you're up to date, because the homework, if we can call it that, over the next 2 weeks is the most intense, probably the hardest work, probably emotionally the most difficult thing that you're going to be called to do in building your referral system. And so if you're not up to date at this point, you need to stop immediately and get up to date, because otherwise you're going to just fall behind irreparably, unfortunately. So let's do a little recap of where we've been so far. Remember the big picture of what we're doing here. We're trying to build a database of people that will allow us to work by referral. In order to do that, we've said you're going to need essentially two types of people in your database. You're going to need a small inner circle group. When I say small, we're saying you're aiming for 300 advocates. You can start at 100. So between 100 and 300 advocates. An advocate is the person that you think is the most likely out of all the people you know, the people who are most likely to refer you or to use you themselves. So you may know 5,000 people if you go through all your lists and contacts on your phone and Facebook friends, etc. But out of that, there's going to be a much smaller group of people who you feel like are somewhere along that they know me, they like me, they trust me continuum. They've moved down that path somewhat with you so that they would be happy to support your business. And that was the homework up until the point where we're at now, is for you to have built up your big list of names and then sorted that list down to your 100 to 300 advocates. And then once you've got those 100 to 300 advocates, everybody else behind that, unless you want to delete them entirely from the list, we're calling your B list. And then what we said you had to do was go and type up your B list and your advocate list onto your CRM system, which in our case at EXP for most of you is PropCon. So type it up onto PropCon. And then back to that big picture, once you've got this list of people, what you're going to start doing is having regular communication, and there's this combination on that apple tree diagram of written communication on the left-hand side and then followed up with personal contact on the right-hand side. It's not enough just to send people stuff, written communication stuff. You've also got to follow that up with your advocates. Now, this is not the B list. With your advocates, you've got to follow that up with personal contact, whether it's a phone call or a lunch or a little pop-by visit to their home, or a client party, something of that nature. And we're going to get into all of those little individual pieces of the system later, but just get the big picture in your mind. You've got this database that's made up at its core of your VIPs, your advocates, and you are going to implement a structured communication plan with those advocates, what we might call a keep in touch system with those advocates, with a proven combination of different touch types, some written communication, some personal contact, that I'm going to teach you this proven sequence of touch types that we know works. The other thing that I'd given as kind of homework over the last 2 weeks was to learn that all-important, what we call the Columbo Dialogue. Oh, by the way, because that's what Columbo used to do, or the oh, by the way dialogue. This is the dialogue you're going to be using over and over and over and over and over again with your advocates in order to get referrals from them. And it goes like this. Oh, by the way, Mr. Jones, if you know anyone thinking of buying or selling their home who would appreciate the kind of service that I offer, please call me with their details, and I promise to look after anybody you refer to me. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, just let me know. Okay, that's the oh, by the way dialogue. You've got to learn that thing off by heart. And every time you have a conversation with someone, you need to finish it off right at the end of the conversation, just before you put the phone down or just before you leave their presence. Oh, by the way, Mr. Jones, if you know anyone thinking of buying or selling their home and appreciate the kind of service I provide, please call me with the details, and I promise to look after anybody you refer to me. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, just let me know. I promise you, learning that and practicing it and getting into the discipline of using it all the time will pay huge dividends for your business. Why? Because we're not just in the business of making friends. We're in the business of getting referrals. We're in the business of procuring leads, of setting up a steady stream of warm, pre-qualified leads, and that's not going to happen on its own. You're a salesperson after all, and you have to be using certain language in order to get what you want. You know, from time to time, you're going to see me push quite hard on aspects of our system, and it's not for any other reason than I know these things work. Through my relationship with Brian Buffini and what they've done, changed the world in America, and having brought Brian's business to South Africa, we've done this with thousands of realtors and hundreds of South Africa's best real estate agents through the years. And we've one-on-one, we've coached them to implement this system, and we absolutely 100% know that it works if you will just implement it. That's why I get quite particular with some of these details in the system, and one of them is this, oh, by the way, dialogue. Okay, so let's then move on to today's training. You're at the point where you have built, sought, and captured your database onto your CRM system, and the next step now is going to be to prime your database. Now, what is priming the database? Well, if you've ever been through in South Africa, like the Karoo, or you've gone up to Namibia and you've stumbled onto a farm somewhere, you may have come across an old school water pump with a handle like the one you're seeing on your screen. And the way these pump primers work is that you've got to move that handle up and down to get the water that's down deep in the earth to come up that pipe, and you've got to keep pumping if you want the water to come up out the pipe, out the little tap nozzle. And while you're pumping, if you get tired and you stop, the water's just going to go all the way back down that pipe deep into the earth. What you've got to do is keep pumping, and then at some point the water just starts to spit a little bit. Maybe there's a little bit of air and it starts coming out slowly. Then's the most important time to keep pumping. Don't stop pumping, because if you stop, it's all going to go back down. You've got to get the water flow going. But as soon as the water starts flowing freely now, then you can actually slow down and then stop using the primer, because now the flow has happened. This is exactly what it's like working by referral. You've got a bunch of people on your database now. Think about it logically. You've got, let's say, 200 advocates, between 100 and 300 advocates. Yeah, let's say you've got 200. They've been typed up on your PropCon system. But none of these people have had any contact with you regarding this new referral system. Many of them are just people that you know, who you've got a good relationship with. But to be honest, they don't really support you with a lot of referrals right now, and they don't understand what's going through your mind about, taking your business up to the next level and really depending on them to refer people to you regularly. They have no idea that that's going through your mind. It's almost like the water is there, the referrals is there, but it's deep down in the earth. And you've got to do something right at the beginning of implementing your system that brings that water up the pipe and is now ready to start flowing. You've got to prime the pump of your database. There are essentially three reasons why you need to prime this pump. The first one is, and we're going to read this in the sentence on your screen, is that given the big picture of what we're trying to do here, before you start keeping in touch with your advocates, you've got to confirm each advocate's support. So this is the first thing. You've got to actually confirm that the people that you think are going to be advocates are actually advocates. You might phone someone and say, you're going to use a little dialogue that I'm going to teach you. Would I be the agent that you would refer? And this person might say, well, my wife's just become an estate agent. She works in the same area that you do. So actually, we're going to just use my wife, or some other excuse why they can't refer you. Well, that's fine. That's their right. But you then have the responsibility to then remove them from your database. You don't want to be keeping in touch with someone that you think is an advocate that's not actually an advocate. So that's the first reason we do this. It is to confirm the support of your advocates. The second reason we do this is to awaken that support. to awaken the support. Now, that's the priming the pump analogy. These people are almost like dormant supporters, like dormant agents for your business, secret agents, but they're dormant, and they've got to be awakened to now begin doing what you want them to do. You've got to prime the pump. And then the third reason we make this phone call that you're going to be doing over the next 2 weeks, hopefully, is to prepare these advocates for the level of contact or the level of communication that they're about to start receiving from you. And again, just think about this logically. You've got, say, 200 advocates who are not used to hearing from you as regularly as they are now going to start hearing from you. They're not used to getting stuff in the post from you. They're not used to getting perhaps a monthly newsletter from you. They're not used to having you pop by their home from time to time with a little gift. And they're certainly not used to hearing regularly, oh, by the way, Mr. Jones, if you know anyone thinking of buying or selling their home, that Columbo Dialogue, they're not used to any of this. And if you just suddenly start doing it without any explanation, it's going to seem a little bit weird, a little bit like cringe awkward. You don't want it to be cringe awkward. So this is the third reason we're going to make the phone calls we're going to make over the next 2 weeks, is to prepare them, to explain to them in advance. Because I'm going to be taking working by referral much more seriously in my business, I'm now implementing a more structured communication plan with the important people in my life, and that includes you. And so you're going to be hearing from me more often. Does that make sense? You might want to just play that part of the video back to hear that little dialogue that you're going to use at the end of these phone calls, just explaining to them why they're going to be hearing from you. Okay, so those are the 3 reasons we're going to make these phone calls, and I want to talk to you now about the script you're going to use on the calls themselves. Okay, so the next step after building, sorting, and capturing your database is to phone through all your advocates and prime each person using what we're going to call the database primer dialogue. Okay, so this is going to be the big job over the next 2 weeks, is you are going to phone through the entire list of advocates. Let's say there's 200 of them for you. You're going to phone 200 people in the next 2 weeks, and you are going to use this dialogue with them. Okay, so let's have a look at that dialogue together now. And I would advise you to print this out and put it up next to your phone, wherever you're going to be making your phone calls. And if you are able to do so, actually stand to your feet. Be on your feet when you're making your phone calls. There's a different energy that comes through when you're on your feet making these kinds of repetitive phone calls. And here's what the phone call is going to sound like. After whatever chit-chat you have is done, you're going to say the following. Mr. Jones, the reason for my call is that I've recently made a decision to build my business exclusively by referral. And part of that means focusing on delivering an exceptional level of service to my current clients and also keeping in touch better with my past clients and the other important people in my life. And so what I'm trying to do initially is get clear on who it is who would actually be happy to refer me. So can I ask you, if you were buying or selling your home, or you had a friend or a family member who was, am I the agent that you would refer them to? Would you be happy to refer me? Now, at that point in the conversation, you need to be very disciplined to keep quiet. You need to let them, force them almost, to answer the question. You want them to give you a verbal commitment of support. It must come out of their mouth. There's something about when somebody verbally commits to something that it increases the stakes. It increases the likelihood of them following through. Now, of course, they're not going to follow through just because of this conversation. That's not what I'm saying. That's why I'm going to be teaching you a whole keep in touch plan going forward from this phone call. But this is very important. This is priming the pump. It's getting the water up the pipe ready to come out. They say, yes, of course, Stephen, of course I'd be happy to refer you. You will then say, well, thanks so much for that, Mr. Jones. Your referrals really do mean a lot to me. And perhaps at that point you want to say what I said earlier. Maybe you want to go back on the video. At that point you want to say, great, well, I'm going to be keeping in touch in a more regular fashion. I'm starting something called my Client Appreciation Program, something that you may want to call it. I'm putting together this program, and I'm going to be having more regular contact with you in the future, and I look forward to that. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, just let me know. That's the phone call. Can you do it? If you can do it once, you can do it 200 times. And in fact, it'll get easier and easier as you go through. So when you put the phone down, you then have another job. What is that job going to be? Well, immediately after each successful primer phone call, send the advocate a handwritten note to thank them for their pledge of support. To thank them for their pledge of support. Now, I write handwritten notes every day. It's part of the discipline that I'm trying to implement in my own business. Why? Because handwritten notes, as we're going to get to, it's something I'm going to teach you about later in the system, they are probably the most powerful way to build and deepen trust and relationships with people is to send handwritten notes. So if you were to look on my desk, I've got 2 handwritten notes that have already been written. They're sitting on the corner of my desk. All I need to do is pop down to the post office and put them in the post box. Now, I realize South Africa's postal system may not be as reliable in your area as it is in some other parts of the country. I think they're probably more reliable than you give them credit for. I would advise you try it. Write 10 handwritten notes, post them, and then when you speak to those people, just see whether they got the note or not. If you're finding that most people are not receiving your handwritten notes, then you need to solve the problem. Send it through PostNet or hand deliver it, or pay your teenage child to once a week deliver all your handwritten notes if possible, if they're within the geographic area in which you live. You've got to just get around the problem and solve the problem. I can't solve it for you. You have to use handwritten notes in our system. It is a major part of building the relationships with your advocates. Okay, so what do those handwritten notes say after these primer phone calls? So again, I don't want you to lose track. What are we doing? We're phoning through our 200 advocates over the next 2 weeks, and we're using this database primer dialogue saying, I've recently decided to work by referral. Part of that means keeping in touch better. I'm trying to get clear in the beginning who it is that is happy to refer me. Can I ask you, would you be happy to refer me? That's basically the dialogue. They say, yes, Stephen, I'd be happy to refer you. You say, great, well, I'm going to be keeping in touch on a more regular basis, and I look forward to that with you. Cheers for now. Put down the phone. What do? I pick up a handwritten note. You've got to plan ahead. You've got to go to Cardi's. You've got to do something, get a bunch of blank handwritten notes with a bunch of envelopes and a box of stamps, and you pull out a note, and this is what you then say. Now, obviously, it doesn't have to be exactly this wording, but it's going to be something to this effect. Dear Mr. Jones, just a short note to say a big thank you for pledging your support for my business. Now, again, we are trying to use repetitive communication to create critical mass in people's minds. Critical mass is that point at which they hear the word buy, sell, home, property, real estate, and they involuntarily, immediately think of you. It's like you don't do an internet search, you just Google something. We have associated the company Google with internet searches. They've got critical mass. That's what you want with your database. You want them to associate you with real estate. They hear the word real estate, they think of you involuntarily. Well, the way you do that is by using repetitive language over and over and over again, and repetitive messaging. So you've had a certain message on this phone call. I want to trust you to refer me. Would you be happy to refer me? Now you want to repeat that in the note. Guys, everything we do in this system has reason. We have done this. This system has been honed and refined for 25 years. We know that it works. That's why if you're happy to trust me, just use this exact wording in your handwritten notes. So I want to thank you for pledging your support for my business. I deeply value my relationship with you, and so your referrals are tremendously important to me. So there's 2 words there that you are repeating: relationship I'm building a relationship with you. You have a relationship with me. That's what you want them thinking. And the purpose of this relationship from a business perspective is so that you can trust me with your referrals. Again, we are repeating language that's important. I promise to look after anybody or anyone you refer to me, and if there is ever anything I can do for you, please let me know. That last little refrain, if there's ever anything I can do for you, just let me know. That's at the end of all of our dialogues. Again, that's a phrase you want them starting to recognize. You say it all the time. And then chat soon, Stephen. Okay, that's the handwritten note. So, hopefully that is clear to you. Guys, there's good news and bad news as we look at the to-dos for the next 2 weeks. The first one is to call through all your advocates and prime each one using the database Primer Dialogue. If you've got 100 advocates, that'll be 10 calls a day over 2 weeks, Monday to Friday. If you've got 200 advocates, it's 20 calls a day. If you've got 300 advocates, it's 30 calls a day. So I've got good news and bad news for you on this. The bad news, let's start with the bad news first, is that this, my friends, is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your real estate business. Hard because it's emotionally difficult, especially in the beginning when you start with the phone calls, because you're using a dialogue you're not familiar with, you're very insecure about how it's going to be received. You've just got to push through that. There's no way around it. Get on the phone, 3, 2, 1, boom, call. 3, 2, 1, even if you have to use that little countdown method, it works with cold calling. This is not cold calling, but it is an emotionally difficult phone call because it's a dialogue you're going to be using. That's the first reason. It's emotionally difficult. But secondly, it is an enormous amount of work. To make 20 phone calls in a day is a lot. But to do 20 phone calls Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, over a 2-week period that you block out and say, I'm going to do this. If it kills me, I'm going to do it. It is difficult because it is the consistency of getting it done every single day. And then on the Saturday, you can mop up whatever you didn't get done during the week. Guys, it's a lot of work, and I'm not hiding that from you. But this is for your future. This is for your family. This exercise can change your life. And now that's the good news that I want to share with you. I predict with absolute certainty what is going to happen here. When you make this number of phone calls to people, particularly when those phone calls are organized around a good dialogue, a dialogue that is bringing up the subject of business and bringing up the subject of referral business. When you make this many phone calls and you have this amount of contact with other human beings, you are going to get leads. I guarantee you, you're going to pick up leads. There's many of you that are going to give some testimonial in the next 2 weeks that sounds like this. I made these phone calls and I got 15 leads, and I've already picked up 3 new listings from the leads that I got from those phone calls. It's unavoidable. This is what happens when you have lots of contact with other human beings. And just as an aside, one of the reasons many estate agents fail to succeed in their real estate business is because they are simply not having enough contact with other human beings. They are not getting into enough into enough conversations with other people, whether those are phone calls or face-to-face. And so even without the dialogue, if you were to have 200 phone calls in the next 2 weeks, you'd pick up business. But with this dialogue, it just puts it on steroids because you're talking about referral. Would you be happy to refer me? Oh, yes, I would. Actually, my next door neighbors was shouting over the fence last night that they're thinking of selling. Here's their number. Give them a call. That's what's going to happen. So the bad news is it's an enormous amount of work. The good news is at the end of this 2 weeks, you're going to sit back so satisfied that you've done it, so glad that you've done it because of the amount of business that it's brought in for you. And then the second part of your homework, as we were chatting about earlier, is to then, after every phone call, send every successfully primed advocate a handwritten note thanking them for their support. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. God bless you. If you look below this video, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to try to get a link below in the description below to be able to download the slides. Otherwise, check the email that you got from me. If you're on my database, you would have got an email with a link to this video in it. And in that email itself, I'll put a little button where you can download the slides, where the dialogue is, where the script for the handwritten note is. These are all important details for you to be able to implement this over the next 2 weeks. So guys, go get it. Go get it. Give yourself, give your family, give your future the chance of being disciplined over this next 2 weeks, because I guarantee you it will be tremendously rewarding, and it's going to set up your referral system, having primed that pump, brought the water up for the future. So God bless you, enjoy it, and I pray that you get great results, and we'll speak in 2 weeks again.